that umbrella. And what we've heard for women, you know, and now this is more true, I think, than ever, is that they want work to really work for them, especially in midlife when they're thinking about making a change. Many of them don't want to go back to the kind of rat race or 9-to-5 schedule that they had in the past. In a survey that Harvard Business Review reported out on, 96% of US employees say that they need flexibility, 47% have it, and this gap for women is 34%. We also know that providing some type of flexibility will keep women in the workforce and improve retention. So nearly 3/4 of women on a career break say that they would consider going back if a job offered flexible hours or allowed them to work from home. So again, I think that the corporate mindset needs to shift to accommodate some of what women are wanting, and that we see is happening now. This crisis is presenting those kinds of opportunities. So we wanted to take the pulse before we get into the presentation of where everybody's at. If you would, in the chat room, respond to, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the greatest, how achievable do you feel that flexible work opportunities are for you? So, so on a scale from 1 to 5, if you can just put your number in the chat so we can get a sense of where everybody's coming from. Okay, lots of 2s, so 2s and 3s, a lot of 2s and 3s, very few 4s and 5s. Great. So it sounds like that the population, or all the women that we have here pretty much mirror some of the surveys that we were seeing nationally. So like not too many 4s, but a lot of 2s and 3s. So we want to get that to being 4s and 5s, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Thanks, everybody. And so we talked about the perspective of individual women, but what's really exciting, the quote that I shared from Michelle Obama, that was pre-pandemic. And those surveys that I referenced to with those statistics, that was also pre-pandemic outbreak. And this is a very recent article in Harvard Business Review that's talking about that not only are women wanting flexibility, but now's a time for companies to step back and re-examine the traditional ways of work, and do they exist because that's all, you know, we've always done it that way out of convention, and not of necessity. And we always like to say, you know, necessity is the mother, you know, of invention. And so we are so happy that we have so many, you know, we have so many perspectives of women that we work with. And now from Pride Global, we're going to be hearing from the employer side, the employer perspectives of where companies are moving. So before we get to introduce Kate, we just wanted one last touch of your biggest challenge in pursuing flexible work. Some of that we'll be discussing in the breakout rooms, but on, if you could just type in, is it a lack of connection to opportunities? Is it resume help that you need to position yourself in the marketplace for more flexible work, whether it be project-based, freelance, contract, figuring out how to market yourself, knowing where to look for flexibility, flexible opportunities, or is it something completely different? If it's something other, you can also tell us what that is. But we'd love to understand what some of the barriers are that people are facing. Someone said all of the above. Lack of connections and knowing where to look. That's come up. Lack of connections. 1 and 4 seem very popular. 3 and 4, figuring out how to position yourself. So there's really a range. Combining experiences, it seems like, clinical and administrative. It seems like 1 and 4 are the ones that are resonating with people. So lack of connection to opportunities and knowing where to look for flexible work. And that's a perfect segue into introducing Kate Goss, the managing partner of Pride Global, and her Pride's affinity group, the Lioness Group. So Kate, we're going to turn the presentation mic over to you And thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. And we're so excited to hear from you. So thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Judy. Hi, everyone. As Judy mentioned, so I'm Kate Goss. I'm the Managing Director of Pride One, which is one of the companies within the Pride Global family of companies, which is well represented across our Lioness group. We're really excited to be involved in the Evolve organization. And I think how we got involved is actually a great illustration of one of the points that I'm going to make a couple of times, talking about flexible work and work opportunities. So let me just check. Everybody can hear me, right? We're good? Okay. Sims Tulos, who Judy mentioned, is one of our Lioness steering committee members. And she works, has a colleague named Mike McCumsky, who started a networking group. And Judy's sister, who is on this call, I saw Deborah, is also involved in the same networking group. So Deborah talked to Mike, who talked to Sims, who got in touch with Deborah, who put her in touch with Judy, and the conversation started, and here we are. So just talking about connections and having conversations, and that they lead to unexpected places, but it's just really critical to have those conversations. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in my little talk. So let me tell you a little bit about Pride for those of you who haven't heard of us. So the first iteration of Pride started in 1983. Our founder is Leo Russell. Leo, hence Lion, hence Pride. And so he started out selling computer hardware, basically, I think, out of his apartment on the Upper West Side. So selling computers turned out to be not a great business because you have inventory sitting around going obsolete in a warehouse. So he started to pivot to focusing more on the humans that were working on those computers as opposed to the computers themselves. And then fast forward over the decades, if you look at the next slide, you'll see the different, well, we're listing, you know, that we are operating in on 3 continents and in multiple brands. So here's our brands. And so we focus in a whole lot of different areas, all sort of more or less related to human capital, you know, finding, retaining, and getting the most out of the people in your organization. So for example, Russell Tobin, you'll see there, is professional search and staffing. The Pride Health, self-explanatory, very busy these days in the healthcare space, also search and staffing. We also do some light industrial recruitment. In the Pride Advisory brand, we help mostly small businesses. You know, in the course of our work, we've gotten very good at sort of accounting and operations and those sorts of tactical things. So we take that expertise out to our client base. We've decided to build software to replace software we used to have to buy, and we're taking that out to the market. And so the point being, we're pretty well versed in the concept of pivoting and taking advantage of opportunities and making a change, because that's kind of what we do as a company. And so we're very diverse, and one of the benefits of being a diverse company is that now that we're in this crisis state, we do have a diverse client base, a lot of different revenue streams across different industries, and that's helped us to be really well positioned to weather the particular, you know, difficult time that we're in. We also try to take advantage of opportunities within the company that we identify to make ourselves better. So one way that we're doing that is with our Lioness group that you mentioned. So Lioness is, you can see on the right there, kind of where the name came from. But essentially what we're doing with Lioness is identifying opportunities and obstacles that disproportionately affect women, both within Pride and, you know, somewhat out in the markets that we work in. And, you know, so this came about because we identified that while we think we do a really great job of attracting, you know, very smart, talented women into the company, once they're in, sometimes you know, we're subject to some of the same forces that a lot of companies are. And, you know, maybe they leave us more quickly than we would like, or they don't advance. We don't have as many women advancing to leadership positions as ideally we would like, so that they're equally represented through all sort of echelons within the company. So Lioness is a way for us to identify, to the extent that we're able, ways to make progress on those fronts. So, you know, we might, you know, we attack them in different ways with still very much a work in progress. We're all of us involved in it are really excited about it. We have events, we have internal events with groups like you guys. We are trying to provide an opportunity for women to be trained and to practice those skills in a safe environment. So let's say you're a new manager and you need to practice having a difficult conversation with someone on your team about, you know, maybe an underperforming team member. Provide a forum for us to do that in a way that maybe feels safe. And one of the things I have found during this pandemic and this lockdown is it's been super helpful to me just to have the relationships across our different business lines. So I don't know about you guys out there, but even in a not that big of a company like Pride, where we, you know, maybe have 200 people in the United States, I don't always get a chance to meet with and talk to and build relationships with women that are not in my business line, right? You know, so if they're not in my chain of command, you know, then I might see them on the floor, not anymore, but I used to, and still not know who they are. So the opportunity to build those relationships has been super valuable. And we're going to continue to focus on this Lioness effort and really try to take advantage of that opportunity. So now, what is this contingent labor business that I've been talking about? What it is, as Judy explained, it's sort of anything beyond the 9 to 5, any way to work for a company or provide services, make a living without being a full-time employee of the company that you're working for. To give you some context, it's a really huge part of our economy. By some studies, they say up to 40% of the workforce is actually in a contingent, has some element of contingent labor in their life. It might not be all that they're doing, but, you know, maybe it's a side hustle. You know, they're driving on the weekends or freelancing or what have you. And companies spend over $800 billion on contingent workforce sources. And those are just companies spending. That's not like your Lyft driver or your DoorDash. And so the main way that we see folks getting involved in contingent labor first would be when I was, you know, many years ago, getting started in the business, was just called temping. So you're a temp. It typically means you're still working what would potentially be a regular 9 to 5 kind of a job. You're just not an employee of that company. You still interview for the role. They're looking for a specific skill set to plug into a team for a certain amount of time. So that's a lot of what we do. There's also freelance work, very common in certain businesses, creative, writing, events, you know, the kind of work that lends itself to freelance. Independent consulting, a lot of folks, you know, once they build sort of a body of expertise, can take that out into the marketplace, give them the opportunity to be their own boss and provide services in that way. There is, of course, there's gig work on apps. Probably not what most of the folks on this call are looking to do, but, you know, it's something that's getting bigger and bigger. And then finally, there's what in our business is called statement of work type of work, which is you might be doing that independently, or you might be part of a project team. Let's say there's a professional services company and they need a particular expertise that you might have. They might bring you in just to do a project as part of a team. So for the folks on this call who might be interested in making that transition either back into the workforce or into a different area, what I would say about contingent work is that temping might be a way to make a transition that's a little easier than finding a full-time role, because the barrier to entry is a little bit lower in a certain way. And what I mean by that is you probably don't have to interview with HR. you're probably not going to go through multiple rounds of interviews. Sometimes, yes, but and they're not, they're not looking to make that commitment to you that they do to a full-time employee. So they're looking, there may be a little bit less hesitance to bring someone in who's not that perfect fit. What I will say is that it's probably easier to transition into a different industry, like to take a skill set that you built in one industry and to move it to a different industry. Like, let's say you're in finance but you've spent your whole life in financial services or insurance or something like that, and you've decided you really want to get out of that business and into something that's, let's say media, or you want to work for Facebook or one of those kind of companies. I think it's easier to take a skill set and move it to another industry. It is going to be challenging to get a temp role with a skill set that you have not yet developed on the job, right? Because if you think about it, what they're looking to do is fill a skills gap on their team. So, so that's one way to look at it is I think it's easier to pivot to a different industry than it is to a different role as a temp. By temp, I mean, just a 9-to-5 contingent worker. But one thing to think about, I think, if you're someone who really wants to have that full-time job, not to rule out temp opportunities. For one thing, all of a sudden we find ourselves in a recession, right? 6 months ago, the economy was gangbusters and it was the lowest unemployment we'd ever seen. No longer the case. What I've seen, and now that I've been in staffing for 20 plus years, we've really seen two major downturns. And in both cases, 2008, 2009, the contingent hiring ramps up a little faster than full-time. So you may see more opportunity if you're willing to take that temp role. And don't be afraid if they say it's a 3-month job or a 6-month job, because people get extended and people get converted to full-time. So it's something that shouldn't scare you off if the role or the company is an attractive one. Other ways, I talked about freelancing and independent contracting. It's a great thing to be able to do if you're willing to, I noticed, numbers 1 and 4, right? The opportunity and the connections are the challenging ones. And that would be a challenge in freelancing and independent contracting because you're out there finding your own gigs, right? But what I wanted to let the sort of the group here know is that companies like Pride can be helpful in that area as well in a specific way. And I'll tell you what that is. So a lot of big companies in particular, they may not be, it may be difficult to get them to sign a contract with you, Judy LLC, right? Linda LLC, because you may have a hiring manager that knows you, knows your skills, really wants to bring you onto a project. You've agreed on a rate, everything's good to go. And then the manager runs into sourcing and sourcing says, no, we have supplier risk concerns. We have contracts are a pain. They won't terms and conditions, insurance, blah, blah, blah. So that's where Pride comes in for a lot of companies. And sometimes hiring managers aren't aware of this channel, but I thought you guys might want to be aware of this channel, which is you have a manager that wants to use someone to provide a service, but they can't bring them in directly because they don't want to write checks to 17,000 companies, who are providing services. My company has that master agreement with a lot of large companies like JP Chase, Morgan Stanley, Bank of New York, Capital One, TIA, a lot of companies. So we've already signed on to the terms and conditions, and we can sign you up and provide that channel to bring you in as an independent contractor. So you maintain that flexibility and you can still have that relationship with your client. And we're just we facilitate the relationship in the contract. So it's good for folks to know, if you're having that conversation with a manager who says, oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to get sourcing to sign a contract with you. The question might be, do you have a payroll provider or a pass-through provider? That might be a way to get your foot in the door. So just thought I would share that with you. So now you've decided to make a transition and you're going to need, at this point, a resume. So, whoops, okay.
Sorry.
Moving forward, no problem. So not going to spend a ton of time on that. There's a lot of services out there for resumes, but one thing that I just wanted to say as, again, somebody who started out as a recruiter 20-ish years ago, you want somebody to look at your resume and know what you've done, what you want to do, and why you should be considered to do that job. So, you know, don't be afraid of having multiple resumes. In fact, you definitely should have a tailored resume. I have looked at resumes and said, this person looks great, but I don't think they want to do my job. Like, I don't understand why they're applying to this role. So you don't want that to go through somebody's head. You want to make sure that pick and choose from your experience, not leaving jobs off, of course, but like highlight the different aspects that relate to the role, you know, that you're looking for. And make your accomplishments quantifiable as much as possible. It's not always possible, but like if you increase sales, if you increased retention, if you decreased, you know, errors, you know, that sort of thing, that's always great. And don't be afraid of the gaps in your resume. You know, you're going to have to answer questions about them, of course, but I have seen a lot of resumes with gaps, whether it was for childcare duties, whether it was for parent elder care duties, someone got sick, you know, just be prepared to speak to it. One thing I would say, if you're transitioning back into the workforce and it's been a while, you know, there might be some very tactical training that you can do, such as, you know, one easy example would be, if you haven't worked in an office for 15 years, take a Microsoft class, so that way you can say, yes, I know how to use the most recent version of Excel, the most recent version of PowerPoint. You know, just tactical things like that. I wouldn't take like big expensive classes, but sometimes those little things, and they do have practical help. I did it when I was out of work in 2009. So I would say that's something you could look into doing. So the last point I wanted to make was just about what I started out by talking about, which is the power of your personal connections. I'm not actually a fan of the word networking. I hear networking and I feel tired. I think about going to a professional event and having to walk away with 10 business cards. And I'm like, eh. So, I mean, some people are great at it, and God bless you and keep doing it. But I think, honestly, your best bet is really to tap those personal connections rather than trying within this big crowded cocktail hour to like meet people. I think in my experience, it's best to start with the people who know you, right? And they can know you in a professional capacity, they can know you in a personal capacity. But, you know, even I'm an extrovert and I still don't like to get business cards at an event. But even if you're, you know, more of an introvert, having those one-on-one conversations can be really, really valuable. And you never know where they're going to go to. You don't know you know, what you'll take out of it, but I'll give an example and then I'll finish. But I personally felt like I was kind of in a career rut in the, let's say, mid 2000s, 2006, 2007. And so on the advice of a career coach, I just started calling up everybody I could think of who had a, you know, professional life that I thought was kind of cool, and had conversations with them. And one of them, she was just a phenomenal woman. She had a job in a completely different field that I was in or could get in. She was an attorney. She worked for Women's World Banking. She'd started a microfinance company. Super cool. So I just wanted to kind of find out what her journey was like. And the takeaway that I took from that conversation was, when she was trying to transition into this Women's World Banking role, she just decided to make herself a complete pain in the ass. So excuse my language, but, you know, she just decided, I really want to work for these people. And she tried to get appointments and she couldn't get appointments. And she just showed up and sat in their lobby and basically refused to leave. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that that is what you should do. But what I will tell you is, eventually someone did talk to her and she ended up landing the job. And so my takeaway from that is, you know, as someone who is a little bit maybe too quick to take no for an answer, which may not be the problem with some people, and I admire you, you know, I had to remind myself to think about Nikki. Like, don't take no for an answer. Don't be a pest, you know. I don't want anybody to, charge me with stalking, but be persistent. And so, my takeaway from that is, like, instead of making one call or two, I made 3 or 4 or 5. And over time, over the course of 2 or 3 months when I was out of work, and it was that 5th phone call to one company where the woman finally said, listen, I know a guy you should call. There's this guy named Tim Tobin, and he's kind of in the business, and you should probably talk to him. And so they put me in touch with Tim Tobin, and Tim Tobin had just started a company called Russell Tobin with Leo Russell, and they brought me in for a conversation, and here I am today. So although Nikki didn't get me the job, I learned something from that conversation that I think in a very direct way helped me get the job. So have conversations, tap your network, friends, family, friends of friends, have coffee when you can. And I think don't ask for a job or even necessarily ask who's hiring. Just try to get something out of the conversation, glean a little wisdom, and good things will happen. So that's basically what I would leave you with, and turn it back over to Judy.
Oops.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was really wonderful and really good insights and tips for how we should go about thinking about engaging in contingent work. And just you had a lot of information to share, I think, that we wouldn't necessarily know on our own. So really appreciate you taking the time to walk through that. And also thank you for sharing that story about connections, about how we originally got connected to Pride Global, because it's such a great example of how you never know what conversation will lead to the next conversation that will lead you closer to your next partnership, your next opportunity. So love your closing advice around connections and just always trying to distill that nugget in any conversation. I feel like you can always learn, you can take away that one thing that will get you closer to your next move. So would love to just take a few minutes in the chat if you have questions directly for Kate, and then we'll move into breakout groups for a bit to have a more intimate conversation. But please log your questions in the chat log, and then we'll repeat them back for Kate. There's one question that came up that in one of the earlier exercises where somebody had asked a question about the barriers, and they responded about, how do you feel like you have any power when you've been out of the workforce to seek out new opportunities around flex work?
Oh, that's a great question. So my answer 3 months ago maybe is a little, I'll shade it for today, but I don't think the situation we're in now is long-term going to change the situation in the US. And that is that when you haven't been on the hiring side, you may not fully appreciate like just how hungry companies are for talent. And like I said, over the last month and a half, it may feel different, but I think it's a this is a short-term challenge. If you're confident in your skills, I think what you should sort of be telling yourself in your head is that companies, even now, even in the downturn, are just dying to bring in talented people because particularly in a service industry like ours, we don't have a product, right? We're not Apple, we're not building something, we're not creating a physical thing. So the differentiator for us in the market is the quality of our people. So we live or die based on the quality of the talent that we have. So, in terms of like, what power do you bring? I think if you are confident in the value, in your experience, the audience on this phone call, there's things that even the sharpest person right out of college just can't know, right? They just can't, and it's not their fault. So, if you know that you have that experience, that value, you've brought it to companies in the past, you know, and you might have to be a little humble. You know, you might have to take less money than you in your heart, you know, you deserve, or a lower, slightly lower, you know, title. But if a company gets a hold of a talented person, they're going to do whatever they can to keep that person. And so, you know, just understanding that in a particularly a heavy service economy, the quality of the people is what makes the difference. And if you feel like you're that quality and you can sell that, that's where I think that confidence would come from.
Great, thank you. There's another interesting question about what do you think about corporate board roles as flexible work opportunities?
I think corporate board roles are absolutely great opportunities. I am not an expert on, you know, what those look like, but certainly when I look at a resume that's got, you know, that's got those on there, I guess we would be talking about paid roles at this point, or just a way of getting experience. Looking to you guys, paid roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the opportunity to take those roles, I would absolutely say to jump on it. And, you know, it can only increase your value to other companies in the market to have that kind of exposure to a wide range of corporate governance.
Great. Thank you.
I can see them. I don't know if you want to pick.
Maybe we'll do one more around, there was a good question about how do you address a career sabbatical on your resume? You kind of alluded to that, if you have anything more to say about that. And then lastly, I'll just give you the last two. How do you think the healthcare crisis will shape the landscape regarding opportunities for remote work or flexible schedules?
Yeah, so going to the career sabbatical, you know, of course, the hardest job to get is the first one after your sabbatical, right? You know, once you kind of overcome that hurdle, then it becomes a lot more of a non-event. But be honest with your HR person or the recruiter that you're working with. You know, was it what the reasons were? You don't have to try to invent stuff that you did during that sabbatical, you know, you like to make it sound like you were still sort of kind of working. It's fine if it's just a sabbatical. If you were caring for children, caring for parents, you know, even just, you know, taking a break to travel, whatever the case may be, I wouldn't try to fluff it. I would just explain it. And then again, you might just have to be a little flexible on, you know, dollars or titles or, you know, to get that foot back in the door. But you know, what I would encourage you to kind of bear in mind is that, again, once you get that first job back in the door and you show that, yes, you know, your head's back in the sort of professional game, I think it becomes a lot, not that it's a non-event, but it's kind of close to a non-event, honestly, to have that gap. And then the healthcare crisis. So this is an interesting one because, you know, companies, as you mentioned in the beginning, Judy, like companies that were maybe not so open to, you know, flexible work arrangements, work from home, all of a sudden had to become comfortable with it because they had no choice in the matter. For most of us, of course, certain jobs continue to be done in person. But so I think now that companies have had that experience, it'll be interesting to see. And I would hope what that means is that now that managers have seen that sort of the sky doesn't fall when they don't, you know, see their folks every day face to face, that maybe there would be more openness to those flexible, you know, work arrangements. Certainly for the next year or so, it's going to be interesting because I don't see anything radically changing in terms of it's suddenly going to be okay to have 300 people sitting on an open floor, you know, because there's not going to be a vaccine, and you know, so so companies will have to adapt. So I think it'll definitely look different in 2022 than it does in 2020, and hopefully it'll be more conducive to those flexible arrangements.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Kate. I think we're going to spend the rest of our time trying to have some quick conversations to touch base with each other and make those connections that we talked about. And we know that those are far and few between. So we want to have a little bit of time for people to get to know each other. So we're going to break everybody into breakout groups for about 7 minutes or so. And we're going to address this question. It's going to come up.
Sorry, I was making the breakout groups.
So we're going to break everybody into small groups. And if you could discuss this question, which is, what is one thing you can do now to move toward having more flexible work opportunities, to removing some of those barriers that we identified before, and maybe moving towards more, connection. So we're going to give everybody just a minute or so to go around and share that. And think that through with the group, and then we'll come back together and hear just from a few people their takeaways, and then we're going to share some ways to stay involved with Evolve and with Pride. So I hope you can stick with us. We might go to about 5 after 2, but we'll try our best to end as soon as we can. I know everybody's busy and moving on in their afternoon. So. Great. So Linda, okay, so what we should know is that one person should be a timekeeper. So we're going to do this, let's see, it's 1:51 now, let's say for 7 minutes. And then we're going to come back together, and there's going to be a countdown when you have to come back into the full group. So you're going to have 60 seconds before you come back, but we'll bring you back in 7 minutes. And there'll be Pride staff dispersed throughout your group. So enjoy talking to each other, and we'll see you soon.
All right, here we go.
Hey.
Oh no.
Did I do that?
I just clicked something.
Uh-oh.
Okay, people are starting to come back. Okay, people are starting to come back together.
Oh, I guess we're back.
Great, nice to see everybody coming back. Hope you had a little bit of time to make some connections and share some of what has been on your mind, takeaways. So we'd like to move on and hear from at least one or two people. If you could give us some takeaways of what you discussed. What are the kinds of things that people feel like they can do now to move in that direction toward more flexible work, or positioning themselves for more flexible work, actions they can take, who they want to connect with, things like that. Okay, let's see, in the chat room. Okay, do we have, let's see.
I can jump in, Judy.
Great.
Tell us here. Hey,
Yeah.
so I was connecting with Kate Gottlieb, and we were speaking about her expertise in the disability and inclusion strategy program. She was with Girl Scouts of America for a long time, and then took a break in 2010. And so I was telling her about our Pride Advisory division and the way that we structure that business, as far as, you know, people with certain expertise that can help with the operations of a company. A company may be looking to talk to an expert, you know, 1 or 2 days a week, maybe once a month, things of that nature. And so if it's a larger project work, we are able through that business to bring on people with specialties and who, you know, can speak to certain areas that are considered experts and have been, you know, worked at large corporations like Girl Scouts of America. And so it's always great to know people who specialize in, especially an important sector like disability and inclusion. So to think of those opportunities of people who want to market themselves with a large organization behind them, like Pride Advisory, who can say, hey, we do have this person that's in our network, if you want to talk to them, and
everybody
bring
can
them
keep
on as a
themselves on mute.
contractor. So that was a little bit about what Kate and I talked about, and letting her know sort of about our advisory division and how we are able to leverage that talent in our network and be able to, the more we know about people who can specialize in these things, we're able to connect them to potential opportunities.
Thank you. And it's great to hear you, Kate, and see you here. Okay, do we want one more person? If you want to just share a highlight. Let's see, anybody in the chat room? Victoria, do you want to share anything?
Hi, sure, I would with pleasure.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we had, it ended up being just two of us. I think the third person had a confusion. There was listening to one group, but seeing another group, so something broke there. Yes, the person I was on the call with is Morgan Zazuri, and we really just, Morgan works for Pride Lioness, so she was wonderful to give me some information about that. And I kind of shared my experience, and the one thing that I am looking for, and the one thing that I think will help me going forward, is having more connections and more networking. I think that's going to increase just the opportunities that might come up. So having these type of events are very important right now.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Okay, We wanted to close with a few opportunities to stay engaged, which is at the beginning of our time together. I spoke about our Evolve founding membership that we launched last week, and we're really excited about this opportunity to work directly with a group of women ongoingly. If you become an Evolve member, you'll have free admission to virtual workshops and networking events, discounts on our courses, and our longer term reinvention collective, which you can really, dig deep into to get your career change going with a group of like-minded women from across all different industries, which is really important in terms of, making new connections. We'll also be equipping you with Evolve with Action challenge worksheets, because we know that making any type of career change is really not about thinking about it, but it's about doing. So getting you into the doing mode with taking action. And we're gonna be hosting an annual mentorship experience for women, connecting women returners with women leaders, women entrepreneurs, and so forth. We're really excited about that. We also know that once women go through some of our programming, they have ideas and they want to tap back into groups of other women to test their ideas with. So we're going to be creating a peer-to-peer idea incubator for women thinking about professional advancement, and a private Facebook group where you can have direct access to Linda and I and our other women in our network to pose questions, get advice, hear the latest and greatest about Evolve and our partners like Pride. So we're super excited about that. And you can find out more information on our website about that. Anybody who falls into this category, 40 over 40, we're highlighting the stories of women who are reinventing their careers or are in the process of it. We publish these stories on our website and on social media. So please be part of creating a platform to make women in midlife more visible, what they're capable of and where they're going in their careers. And that form is on our website. Well, the form it's a simple form you can fill out. And please follow us on social media, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, a little bit less on Twitter these days, but on all the socials. And we can't wait to see you at our next event, which is actually next week. So you'll hear more about that soon. And I can't thank Pride Global and team enough for spending the time to work with us on this article, the feature piece, and the webinar today. They've just been incredible, and it's so nice to work with a team that that speaks in one voice, and we haven't even worked together that long now, as Kate was mentioning. So it's a really wonderful outcome to come out of this crisis. Please stay in touch with us. We love to hear from you. Email us, linda@evolveme.work and judy@evolveme.work. And if you'd like to stay in touch with any of the women from Pride, you can also email us and we'll connect you with them accordingly. So thank you so much. If the women on Evolve, if you want to just shout out and say goodbye. Is Kate still here?
Hi, thanks.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really fun to put it together with you guys.
Great. Thank you as well. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much and have a good rest of the day. Be well and be safe, and know that our thoughts are with you. If you know people directly who are experiencing COVID, we were talking about that in our group, that we're really sending out thoughts of healing for everybody. So be well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right,
You'll
thank
see
you.
follow up from this presentation as well in an email. Bye-bye.
Bye.